individuals get together as a group, something that you can do on your own, something that you can do with friends. It's a great activity for families. There's a lot of potential economic factor as we develop these trails, and they're cool, and we get notoriety in mountain biking communities of St. Louis, Kansas City, other urban areas. I really do think that people will be coming here as a destination to stay for the weekend at an Airbnb, ride to the trails, and participate in our local economy. So, what are the benefits of building a mountain biking park? There are a lot of them. It's another activity for us as community members to participate in. It's something that you can do on your own, something that you can do with family. And I think that this is going to drive tourism to our town and really have an economic effect of a lot. I can't tell you how much. But we actually have Coolio down here from Gord Gateway out, off-road cyclist. He has been part of building the Shepherd Mountain
the majority of it. I can go into more detail into any of those elements. Do you have any questions? Please. Go ahead. Go ahead. Lots of them.
Do we have any kind of a count with Ironton, like how many people actually have started using the trail since it's been developed?
Yeah. So officially, I actually have had kind of amazing numbers with that place. The town of Ironton is unusual because of the elevation and the geology. If you're familiar with Elephant Rocks, the city owns the mountain behind the town that actually has the same geology. And so it creates a unique environment. That being said, there options, because sometimes they either have really tight timetables, or sometimes you have to wait a whole season or a year for them to come back around again. So I would suggest immediately start exploring those and developing those simultaneously, as appropriate and blessed off by the city. I'd be happy to work with the teams here, and we can start walking and looking at possible areas that would be appropriate for the mountain bike.
Thank you.
Of course.
I don't know anything about how wide, you say trail, how wide are you talking?
So they vary greatly, sir. We have a definition of different styles of riding and different trails, but single track is roughly shoulder width, and that's a more traditional form of building, and we can maintain in that style. You can do double track, and then when you start getting into sculpting, and some areas will look very natural, very hand-built style, and some areas can look a little more sculpted and flowy, and those areas typically are about, there's a smaller, if you're familiar, mini excavator in the 17 size series, and it's probably about this wide, and roughly the trail would be the same width as the track system.
So I was just thinking taking a skid steer.
Yeah, no. So one of our major concerns is environmental protection. We understand root systems, water management, all of that is, yeah, we want to build what we call sustainable systems, sustainable trails. Yeah, we can go with you though. I mean, there can be a place for that, but we want to preserve as many trees. We want to do everything we can to make it look untouched. So again, there can be asphalt if there needs to be for appropriate reasons, but we tend to build what we call natural surface, dirt typically. And
So, you know where Hoppy Springs is? You don't probably don't.
I'm not familiar with it.
I mean, check it, we could almost start there and come all the way across down to the park and then get up into the woods.
That would be,
For some people.
yeah, that would be a vision for us, is to be able to,
Different options.
be able to connect as much of town as we can, to that system, so that people have reason to go over there and
Different,
check out downtown.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys are also familiar, there's the Horsey Trail already here, located in Steelville. I actually maintain it by myself sometimes. I had this last year, I just took it over. And it's a good little gym, and we talked, we can all be weaved together to get through Steelville, from Hobby Springs to Zaworski and back. It's a possibility, but we'll try to use what we have.
You've seen trails, you've been on trails.
Endlessly, yes.
If we was to do this, I would want to do it in a correct manner to draw people. I wouldn't want to be second class to something where, we don't want to go there, it's not good, So, you're talking about width, shoulder width, what would be a preference, would you, on your point of view, would be good? Because I don't want to build something substandard, nobody wants to come out, we're going to do it.
Of course.
So what would your preferences be, something like that?
So if I were to say what I would want to see in an environment, without walking it yet, I drove down there in the dark and took a look around, but that's about as far as I've gotten. That being said, my personal preferences for riding, I like very natural, rocky, fun, challenging technical stuff, combined with, for a lack of better terms, jumpy, flowy, more man-made looking stuff. If we have both elements tied in, you will attract both audiences that usually some people will favor one or the other. But if you combine those elements and make it look like it belongs, it can really attract people. So as a suggestion, you make I'm just making this up, and you have to excuse me, I don't want to interfere with the vision. And we have a multi-directional, friendly but challenging system that allows for beginners all the way up, that wraps the place and gives mileage to riders. And then inside of it, we put elements in directional trails. We put in the flowy stuff, the rock features, the things that kind of make it like a playground. And so if you think of it this way, that's the element of Six Flags, that's the roller coasters, the thing that really attracts the attention, but you want to make sure that it encompasses a full family element and brings everyone in. Because maybe you have the parents, and one parent is the rider, right, that really has that more aggressive style, and then you have the kids and the other parent who maybe wants a little more casual riding, and now you've given them all that. And then we can also do things like in parking areas or near parking, you can put elements in that are for more beginner learning. They call them skills environments, and we can show you photos and videos and stuff like that, and that will really attract the whole family element as well. Yet you entice by providing the things that are more skilled and so forth.
One more other thing I'll let Wales speak.
Sure.
You're familiar with the grants
team that are more familiar.
Are they matching percentages? Do you know how those are applied as far as the responsibility of it?
They vary greatly, actually, sir.
Jason mentioned one was 50%, the other was 20%.
Yep.
50/20.
That's pretty typical of what you said, ma'am.
Jason,
Those are pretty
Jacob.
common.
Jacob. I heard
Sorry.
that, but I didn't know just exactly what you meant by that. I wouldn't.
There's definitely some responsibility on the people building the trail, and we as an advocacy organization would be interested in applying for some of those. There are some that only city governments can apply for, but, that's
Well,
something that we definitely want to explore. But, like they've said, the timeline for those is pretty crucial. Both of those would mean that we wouldn't actually know if we were, the ones that I mentioned, and those are just two that are out there that we would be eligible for, in my opinion.
Would it be beneficial, as Bill brought up, to have this Greenway Trail flowing through, especially like from Hoppy, to have a starting point there, we keep people in town, like you said, a lot of people bypass Steelville, they go right out to the beautiful places, campsites. I'd like to get a starting point where we might benefit that much more by, gas and convenience, so forth, and would that be,
That's super possible. I think we could pretty easily build an infrastructure for cyclists, mountain bikers, and normal cyclists, road cyclists alike, to ride around the city of Steelville with a few lines and bike lanes, connected trails, and
Keeping them out of their cars is key.
well, I know there's an interest.
That's a great thing.
My family, my kids all do this all over the Katy Trail everywhere, so I don't understand exactly what you're saying. I'm just trying to get perspective if we could incorporate some of the town actually, and not just have it out in the wooded areas without, people benefit from it. We get revenue, so forth, everybody, comes away happy, so.
Yes, sir.
And liability, I guess that's something we would just have to look at. That's something we have to check into.
Yeah, generally speaking, you're gonna probably run up whatever insures your parks now, it'll probably bounce off of that, and then we can explore it. Now, I don't wanna give false hopes here, but to understand things, there is a not-for-profit that runs a jumping small area that was originally just kids building, and then it grew into this whole project that became a real park later on. It's been there for 20 years. They raise their funds every year themselves. They insure themselves, and they're able to do that with fundraisers. So I'm not saying that that's an appropriate path for this situation, but to give you an idea that if you work with an insurance company that either has a familiarity or you show them where they can reference other examples, it generally helps back them down and get them into a more reasonable amount. Any other questions, folks?
Thank you very much.
I appreciate your time for letting me speak. Sure. Thank you,
some projects in the making, possibly another T-ball field. We gotta look at where that's gonna be laying. Jason knows, we've talked about that. So that's what we would have to do, though, is look at the sites available. Somebody like you with some of your knowledge, you might visit that with Jason. Jason could fill you in on this land is obligated, or we're planning this anyways for something.
We actually drove around quite a bit the other day and kind of tentatively mapped out some areas for some disc golf holes, and it plays pretty good.
Good.
In everywhere. And, you know, we probably don't have enough space for 18 holes, but we could probably do a solid 9. Just kind of winding parts of the walk trail. And
Good thing about that, Jason, is I don't see a lot of liability on that.
Right. Get cracked in the head with
But
a disc, but
I think I like the ideas, I like all these ideas. I think it's well worth looking into. You know, we've got a lot of ideas going around with parks and recreation and just things right now, and, you know, I'd love to entertain them, you know, with just something we'll have to knock around here for a while, and then when we get into those situations with you and the other, get some details and stuff, so forth, I think it's well worth looking into and, you know, getting further down on as far as the details.
yeah, absolutely. I'd love to, you know, like Dave mentioned, next steps, maybe bringing some folks in just to walk the area and get some basic ideas of what's possible. I think that there's a huge amount of potential because there's 115 acres, and it's all usable for this purpose. If we want to go that far, if we can bring up the budget to do so. But really, the more we have, I think, the more we would have traffic for, you know. Yeah, but thank you all so much for.
We're trying to sell these things for steel. This is a tourism town, and this is the kind of stuff that brings people, and